Ladies and gentlemen, history is not just a collection of dates and events. It is a story of resilience, struggle, and transformation. Today, we embark on a journey through a century of Germany's history, a story that begins in crisis and emerges in power. 100 years ago, Germany was a nation in turmoil. The world had just witnessed the end of the First World War, a conflict that left Europe devastated and reshaped global politics. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, imposed heavy reparations on Germany, crippling its economy and shaking the very foundation of its society. The German people, once filled with pride and ambition, found themselves struggling under the weight of war debts, economic instability, and political uncertainty. The 1920s were a time of great hardship. Inflation soared to unimaginable levels, reducing the value of money to mere scraps of paper. Families saw their life savings vanish overnight. The once thriving industries of Germany were now crumbling, unemployment was rising, and political unrest was spreading like wildfire. The Weimar Republic, the government that emerged after the war, struggled to maintain control amidst protests, strikes, and violent uprisings. But Germany's story did not end in despair. It is a nation that has demonstrated an extraordinary ability to rise from adversity. Despite the struggles of the early 20th century, Germany's people never lost their determination to rebuild, to innovate, and to create a future beyond the ruins of war and economic hardship. The journey of Germany over the past century is one of remarkable transformation. It is a story of how a nation overcame its deepest crises, rebuilt its identity, and emerged as a global powerhouse. It is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of unity, and the lessons that history teaches us about the strength of the human spirit. As we reflect on this incredible journey, from crisis to power, we must ask ourselves, what can we learn from Germany's past? How did a nation that was once on the brink of collapse become a leader in Europe and a force on the world stage? To answer these questions, we must first go back in time to the beginning of this transformation, back to the days of economic hardship, political turmoil, and the struggle for a new identity in the post-war world. Let us now explore the events that shaped Germany's destiny and set the stage for its rise to power. To understand Germany's transformation over the past century, we must first look at one of its most difficult and defining periods, the years following World War I. The early 1920s were a time of immense crisis for Germany, a nation struggling to find stability after one of the most devastating wars in human history. The First World War, 1914 to 1918, had left Europe in ruins, but no country suffered as much as Germany in the aftermath. When the war ended, Germany was forced to accept the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, a treaty that not only held it responsible for the war but also imposed severe economic, political, and territorial penalties. The treaty demanded that Germany pay enormous reparations to the Allied powers, an amount so staggering that it placed an unbearable burden on the nation's already struggling economy. As a result, Germany entered the 1920s in a state of deep financial crisis. The government, desperate to meet its financial obligations, began printing excessive amounts of money. This decision led to one of the worst cases of hyperinflation in history. By 1923, the German mark had lost nearly all of its value. Prices skyrocketed to absurd levels. What once cost a few marks now required wheelbarrows full of paper money. Families saw their life savings disappear overnight. A loaf of bread that had cost 250 marks in January 1923 soared to 200 billion marks by November of the same year. Ordinary citizens, who had worked hard to build a future, found themselves unable to afford even basic necessities. The economic collapse was accompanied by political turmoil. The Weimar Republic, Germany's newly formed democratic government, struggled to maintain order. Political factions clashed violently in the streets, from radical communists to nationalist groups who rejected the terms of the Versailles Treaty. The government faced constant threats from both the extreme left and right, and many Germans began to lose faith in democracy. Adding to the crisis was the occupation of the Ruhr Valley by French and Belgian forces in 1923. When Germany failed to meet its reparation payments, These nations took control of one of Germany's most industrially valuable regions. The occupation further crippled Germany's economy, leading to widespread strikes and resentment among the German people. The humiliation of foreign troops controlling German land only deepened the anger and desperation felt across the country. Yet, despite these immense hardships, Germany was not without hope. In the mid-1920s, international efforts such as the Dawes Plan provided temporary economic relief, and for a brief period, Germany saw signs of recovery. However, the scars of this crisis would not heal easily. The instability of the 1920s planted the seeds of discontent that would later shape the country's political future in ways that the world could never have imagined. The question then arises, how did Germany transition from this desperate situation to becoming one of the most powerful nations in the world? To answer that, we must examine the next phase of Germany's history, the Great Depression and the rise of extremism. As Germany struggled to recover from the economic devastation of World War I and the hyperinflation crisis of the early 1920s, a brief period of stability and economic growth emerged, largely thanks to foreign loans and financial restructuring under the Dawes Plan. However, this fragile recovery was short-lived. The world was about to be shaken by an economic catastrophe that would push Germany further into chaos, the Great Depression. In 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed, triggering a global economic downturn. Germany, which had become heavily dependent on American loans to stabilize its economy, was one of the hardest-hit countries. Almost overnight, banks collapsed, businesses shut down, and unemployment soared. Millions of German citizens, who had only just begun to regain a sense of financial security, found themselves once again in desperate conditions. By 1932, unemployment in Germany had reached nearly 30%, with 6 million people jobless. Families struggled to afford food, and many were forced to live in extreme poverty. The economic despair soon turned into political unrest. The democratic system of the Weimar Republic, already fragile due to years of instability, now faced its greatest challenge. The German people, frustrated by their government's inability to handle the crisis, began to lose faith in democracy. Extremist political groups, both from the far left and far right, began gaining support, offering radical solutions to Germany's problems. On one side, the Communist Party, KPD, called for a complete overthrow of the capitalist system, inspired by the success of the Soviet Union. On the other side, nationalist and far-right movements, including the Nazi Party, capitalized on public anger by blaming Germany's misfortunes on the Treaty of Versailles, foreign influence, and political corruption. They promised to restore Germany's strength, rebuild its economy, and bring back national pride. One of the most influential figures to emerge from this turmoil was a leader who would later take Germany down a path of unimaginable destruction. He and his party used propaganda, mass rallies, and promises of economic recovery to gain widespread support. Their ability to manipulate public sentiment and offer a vision of a stronger Germany resonated with many who had lost hope in the democratic system. As the crisis deepened, German politics became increasingly unstable. The government was unable to form strong coalitions, leading to frequent leadership changes. The public, desperate for stability and solutions, began turning toward extremist leaders who promised swift action. This period saw a dramatic shift in political power, paving the way for authoritarian rule. The economic crisis of the Great Depression did not just create financial hardship, it shattered trust in democratic institutions and fueled radical ideologies. It set the stage for a period in Germany's history that would change the course of the world. The rise of extremism during this time was not just the result of economic failure, but also of deep-seated resentment, political mismanagement, and the desperate desire for a way out of crisis. To understand what followed, we must examine the next chapter in Germany's history, one of war, destruction, and the consequences of unchecked power. By the early 1930s, Germany had fallen into a state of economic, political, and social despair. The Great Depression had left millions unemployed, and extremist ideologies were gaining power. The democratic Weimar Republic was collapsing, and in its place, authoritarian rule was taking shape. By the mid-1930s, Germany had undergone a complete transformation, moving from a struggling democracy to a totalitarian state. This transformation would lead to one of the darkest and most devastating conflicts in human history, World War II. The war officially began on September 1, 1939, when Germany launched an invasion of Poland. This aggressive move led Britain and France to declare war, marking the start of a global conflict that would last for 6 years. At first, Germany saw rapid military success. Using a strategy known as Blitzkrieg or Lightning War, German forces quickly overran much of Europe, including France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and parts of Scandinavia. Within a short time, Germany had become the dominant power on the European continent. However, this expansion came at a great cost. The war was not only fought on battlefields but also against entire populations. Millions of civilians suffered under occupation, and countless atrocities were committed. The persecution of minorities, particularly Jewish communities, intensified, leading to one of the most horrifying chapters in human history, the Holocaust. Millions of innocent people were sent to concentration camps, where they faced unimaginable suffering and death. The world would later remember this as one of the greatest crimes against humanity. As the war expanded, Germany made a critical mistake, launching an invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941. This decision stretched German forces too thin and exposed them to the harsh Russian winter. Despite initial victories, German troops found themselves unable to sustain their momentum. The turning point came at the Battle of Stalingrad in 1942 to 1943, where the Soviet Red Army decisively defeated German forces. From that moment on, Germany's fate was sealed. At the same time, the United States had entered the war following the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan. The U.S., alongside Britain and the Soviet Union, launched a series of offensives that gradually pushed Germany back. In 1944, the Allied forces landed in Normandy on D-Day, marking the beginning of Germany's retreat from Western Europe. By early 1945, Germany was collapsing on all fronts. The Soviet Union advanced from the east, while American and British forces pushed in from the west. The German cities that had once been symbols of industrial power now lay in ruins due to relentless bombing campaigns. Berlin, the heart of the regime, became the final battleground. In April 1945, as Soviet troops entered the city, Germany's leadership crumbled. Within days, the country's leader took his own life, signaling the end of the war in Europe. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered, marking the end of World War II in Europe. But the devastation left behind was almost unimaginable. Cities like Berlin, Hamburg, and Dresden were reduced to rubble. Infrastructure was destroyed, industries collapsed, and millions of people were left homeless. The war had claimed the lives of millions of soldiers and civilians alike, leaving deep scars on the nation. Germany was not only physically destroyed but also morally and politically shattered. The world now faced the question of what to do with a defeated Germany. Would it be punished, divided, or rebuilt? The answer to this question would shape the next phase of Germany's history, a period of division, occupation, and eventually a new beginning. With the surrender of Germany in May 1945, World War II had come to an end in Europe, but for Germany, a new and uncertain chapter was just beginning. The country lay in ruins, its cities reduced to rubble, its economy in collapse, and its people struggling to survive amidst food shortages and displacement. Yet, one of the most defining consequences of the war was not just the destruction, but the division that followed. Germany was no longer a single, unified nation. Instead, it became the epicenter of a new global conflict, the Cold War. After the war, Germany was occupied by the four victorious Allied powers: the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, and France. The country was divided into 4 occupation zones, with each Allied power controlling a portion. Berlin, the capital, was also split into 4 sectors, despite being deep within the Soviet-controlled zone of East Germany. Initially, the goal of the occupation was to denazify, demilitarize, and rebuild Germany, but ideological differences between the Allies soon created deep tensions. The United States, Britain, and France wanted to establish a democratic and capitalist Germany that could recover and contribute to European stability. The Soviet Union, however, sought to maintain strict control over its zone and establish a communist government that aligned with its interests. These opposing visions for Germany's future reflected the broader struggle between the two emerging superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, marking the beginning of the Cold War. By 1949, the division of Germany had become official. The Western zones, controlled by the US, Britain, and France, merged to form the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, a democratic nation aligned with Western Europe and the US. In response, the Soviet-controlled zone became the German Democratic Republic, East Germany, a communist state under Soviet influence. This division was more than just political, it was a physical and ideological split that affected millions of lives. Families were separated, trade between the two Germanys was restricted, and life in each half of the country took drastically different paths. West Germany, supported by the US and Western Europe, experienced economic recovery and political freedom, while East Germany became a tightly controlled socialist state, with limited personal freedoms and a heavily monitored society. The division became even more concrete in 1961, when the Berlin Wall was built. This physical barrier was not just a wall of concrete and barbed wire, it was a symbol of the Cold War. Its purpose was clear: to prevent East Germans from fleeing to the more prosperous and freer West. Over the years, many attempted to escape across the heavily guarded border, but for most, the wall represented a prison that separated them from their families and a better future. While West Germany was experiencing an economic boom, often referred to as the Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle, East Germany struggled under a centralized communist economy. The differences in living standards between the two Germanys became more and more apparent, leading to growing dissatisfaction among East German citizens. For decades, Germany remained at the center of the Cold War, divided not only by political ideologies but also by physical and emotional barriers. The division of Germany was not just a national issue. It symbolized the larger conflict between democracy and communism, freedom and control, East and West. However, no wall, no border, and no ideology could keep a people divided forever. The seeds of change had been planted, and the division of Germany would not last forever. The next chapter in this story would bring about one of the most historic moments of the 20th century, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the long-awaited reunification of Germany. While Germany was divided into East and West after World War II, the two sides took drastically different paths in their post-war recovery. The western part of Germany, officially known as the Federal Republic of Germany, West Germany, was under the influence of the United States, Britain, and France. Unlike after World War I, when Germany was left to struggle with economic hardship, this time, the Western Allies took a different approach. Instead of punishment, they focused on rebuilding Germany as a strong democratic nation that could contribute to the stability of Europe. In 1948, the Western Allies introduced a major reform that would change the course of Germany's future: the currency reform, which replaced the nearly worthless Reichsmark with the new Deutsche Mark. This move was critical in stabilizing the economy and restoring confidence in the financial system. At the same time, the Marshall Plan, an American economic aid program, provided billions of dollars to help rebuild infrastructure, industries, and key sectors of the economy. These reforms laid the foundation for what would become known as the Wirtschaftswunder, the German economic miracle. Under the leadership of Chancellor Konrad Adenauer and his Minister of Economics, Ludwig Erhard, West Germany adopted policies that encouraged a social market economy, a blend of free market capitalism with social welfare programs. This approach allowed businesses to thrive while ensuring that workers were protected and had access to essential services. The results were astounding. Between the late 1940s and the early 1960s, West Germany experienced an unprecedented economic boom. Industries that had been destroyed during the war were rebuilt, factories reopened, and production soared. Unemployment, which had been a major problem in the immediate post-war years, quickly dropped as job opportunities expanded. Within a decade, West Germany went from a struggling, war-torn nation to one of the fastest-growing economies in the world. One of the key factors driving this growth was the export industry. German companies such as Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Siemens, and BASF became global leaders, producing high-quality goods that were in demand worldwide. German engineering and manufacturing excellence became synonymous with reliability and innovation. As West Germany's economy grew, so did the standard of living for its people. Wages increased, social welfare programs expanded, and consumer goods such as cars, televisions, and modern appliances became accessible to ordinary citizens. Another critical element of the economic miracle was labor migration. With rapid industrial expansion, Germany needed more workers to sustain its growth. In the 1950s and 1960s, West Germany signed labor agreements with countries like Turkey, Italy, and Greece, bringing in thousands of Gastarbeiter, guest workers, to help meet the demands of the booming economy. These workers played a crucial role in Germany's recovery, filling jobs in factories, construction, and transportation. Many of them stayed in Germany permanently, shaping the country's cultural and social landscape for generations to come. While West Germany was thriving, East Germany, known as the German Democratic Republic, GDR, was struggling under a centrally planned economy imposed by the Soviet Union. Unlike the free market policies of the West, East Germany's economy was controlled by the state, with strict regulations on production, wages, and resources. While some industrial sectors grew, overall economic progress was much slower than in West Germany. The stark contrast between the two Germanys became more visible over time, with East Germans becoming increasingly aware of the higher living standards enjoyed by their counterparts in the West. Despite the successes of the economic miracle, challenges remained. The rapid growth of West Germany's economy created social inequalities, and some regions benefited more than others. Additionally, as the Cold War intensified, Germany's division remained a painful reality. The Berlin Wall, constructed in 1961, became a symbol of that division, physically and ideologically separating East and West. Yet, despite these challenges, West Germany had firmly established itself as a prosperous and stable nation. It became a founding member of the European Economic Community, EEC, the precursor to the European Union, and played a leading role in shaping the future of Europe. The economic miracle had not only restored Germany's economy, but had also helped to rebuild its international reputation, proving that even after the most devastating of conflicts, a nation could rise again through resilience, determination, and the right policies. However, Germany's journey was far from over. While West Germany was experiencing prosperity, East Germany was facing growing unrest. The division of the country could not last forever, and the seeds of change were beginning to take root. The next chapter of Germany's history would bring a dramatic turning point: the fall of the Berlin Wall and the long-awaited reunification of the nation. For nearly 4 decades, Germany remained divided between two vastly different worlds: West Germany, a thriving democracy with a booming economy, and East Germany, GDR, a tightly controlled socialist state under Soviet influence. The stark contrast between these two Germanys was perhaps most symbolized by the Berlin Wall, which was erected in 1961 to prevent East Germans from fleeing to the more prosperous West. This physical and ideological barrier separated families, restricted freedoms, and became one of the most powerful symbols of the Cold War. However, despite the attempts of East Germany's government to maintain control, the pressure for change was growing. By the 1980s, cracks were beginning to show in the system. The centrally planned economy of East Germany was struggling. While West Germans enjoyed high wages, access to consumer goods, and freedom to travel, East Germans faced economic stagnation, shortages of basic goods, and a lack of political freedoms. The Soviet Union, under Mikhail Gorbachev, introduced policies of glasnost, openness, and perestroika, restructuring, in an effort to reform the failing communist system. These changes signaled a shift in Soviet policies, making it clear that the USSR would no longer support oppressive regimes in Eastern Europe through military force. This shift emboldened reform movements across Eastern Europe, and in 1989, a wave of revolutions began sweeping through Soviet-controlled countries. In East Germany, public dissatisfaction had been building for years, but 1989 marked a turning point. Inspired by the democratic movements in Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia, East Germans began staging massive protests. Cities like Leipzig saw weekly demonstrations, where thousands of people gathered to demand freedom, democracy, and the right to travel. The chant, "Wir sind das Volk," "We are the people," became the rallying cry of the movement, emphasizing that the people, not the government, should determine the future of their country. By October 1989, the protests had grown too large to ignore. The East German leadership, under increasing pressure, tried to control the situation, but their efforts only fueled more resistance. Erich Honecker, the longtime leader of East Germany, was forced to resign. His replacement, Egon Krenz, attempted to introduce minor reforms, but it was too late. The people were demanding real change. The defining moment came on November 9, 1989. After weeks of growing unrest, the East German government unexpectedly announced that citizens would be allowed to cross the border freely. The announcement was vague and poorly communicated, leading to confusion among both the public and border guards. That evening, thousands of East Berliners gathered at the Berlin Wall, demanding passage into the West. Overwhelmed and unsure of how to respond, the border guards eventually opened the gates. What followed was one of the most iconic moments in modern history. East and West Berliners rushed to the wall, embracing, celebrating, and even chipping away at the concrete barrier with hammers and pickaxes. The wall, which had stood for 28 years, crumbled, both literally and symbolically, marking the beginning of the end for East Germany. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a moment of national significance, it was a defining event of the end of the Cold War. However, while the collapse of the Berlin Wall was celebrated around the world, it also brought new challenges. The reunification of Germany was not an automatic process. It required careful planning, diplomacy, and economic restructuring. West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl quickly put forward a 10-point plan for reunification, emphasizing economic and political integration. While many Germans supported reunification, others feared the costs and potential instability it might bring. Internationally, reunification required delicate negotiations. Britain and France were initially cautious, concerned that a united Germany might once again become too powerful in Europe. The Soviet Union, facing its own internal struggles, was hesitant but ultimately agreed to the process. In the end, diplomatic efforts led to the 2+4 Agreement, 1990, in which the four Allied powers from World War II relinquished their control over Germany, allowing full sovereignty for a reunified nation. Finally, on October 3, 1990, Germany was officially reunified. The two Germanys, divided for over 40 years, became one nation again. However, reunification was not simply about bringing two territories together. It required merging two very different economic and political systems, integrating millions of East Germans into a new way of life, and overcoming decades of division. Though the wall had fallen and reunification had been achieved, the true challenge was just beginning. How would Germany heal the scars of its division and build a future where East and West could move forward as one? The reunification of Germany on October 3, 1990, was a historic moment, marking the end of decades of division and the dawn of a new era. However, while the political reunification was swift, the process of truly integrating the two Germanys, socially, economically, and culturally, proved to be far more complex. The challenges of reunification were immense, and the country had to navigate a difficult transition as it sought to bring the former East and West together into a single, functioning nation. Economic challenges, the cost of reunification. One of the most immediate and difficult challenges was the economic gap between East and West Germany. While West Germany had enjoyed decades of prosperity and was one of the strongest economies in the world, East Germany had suffered under a centrally planned economy that left it outdated, inefficient, and unable to compete in a free market system. Many East German industries, once state-owned and heavily subsidized, collapsed as they struggled to adapt to a market-driven economy. Unemployment in the East soared as factories shut down, businesses failed, and millions of workers found themselves without jobs. The government had to introduce massive financial aid programs to support the struggling East German regions. The Solidarity Pact, which transferred billions of euros from west to east, aimed to modernize infrastructure, improve public services, and create jobs. However, these efforts were not enough to prevent mass migration. In the years following reunification, millions of East Germans moved westward in search of better opportunities, leading to population declines in many eastern regions. Additionally, the conversion of the East German currency, Ostmark, to the Deutsche Mark at a fixed exchange rate led to economic distortions. While this move was intended to boost confidence in the East, it made East German goods expensive and uncompetitive in global markets, further damaging local industries. The economic difficulties of the 1990s led to growing frustration among many East Germans, who felt like they had been left behind in the reunification process. Social and cultural integration, the wall in the mind. Beyond the economic challenges, Germany also faced deep social and cultural divisions. Though the Berlin Wall had physically fallen, many Germans spoke of the Mauer im Kopf, wall in the mind, a mental and emotional barrier that continued to separate East and West Germans. The two populations had lived under very different systems for over 4 decades, shaping their worldviews, values, and expectations in different ways. West Germans often saw themselves as the victors in reunification and expected East Germans to simply adapt to the West's way of life. Meanwhile, many East Germans felt a loss of identity as their old institutions, workplaces, and even aspects of their culture disappeared almost overnight. There was also resentment towards West Germans, whom they viewed as arrogant or dismissive of their struggles. The term Ostalgie, a blend of Ost, meaning East, and nostalgia, emerged to describe the longing that some East Germans had for aspects of life in the German Democratic Republic, GDR, such as guaranteed employment and a sense of social solidarity. Political differences also emerged. Many East Germans, feeling alienated by mainstream politics, were more likely to support populist movements that promised to address their grievances. Even decades after reunification, voting patterns in East and West Germany continued to reflect the lingering divides, with certain parties gaining stronger support in one region over the other. Rebuilding and modernizing the East. Despite the difficulties, the German government made significant investments to modernize the former East Germany. Roads, railways, schools, and public infrastructure were rebuilt to match the standards of the West. Berlin, which had been divided for decades, once again became the united capital of Germany and a symbol of national unity. Major international companies began investing in the East, and over time, cities like Leipzig and Dresden became economic hubs, slowly closing the gap with their Western counterparts. However, the transformation took time. It was not until the early 2000s that real economic progress was visible in many parts of the East. Even today, differences remain in terms of wages, economic opportunities, and even population growth. While the gap between East and West Germany has narrowed, full integration has been a long and ongoing process. Germany's role in a changing Europe. As Germany dealt with its internal challenges, it was also rising as a leader on the international stage. With reunification, Germany became the most populous and economically powerful country in Europe, giving it greater influence in European politics. It played a key role in shaping the European Union (EU), supporting economic policies that would strengthen European integration. However, reunification also meant Germany had to redefine its national identity. For decades, divided Germany had been a product of Cold War politics, but now it had to find a new role in a rapidly changing world. The country embraced its democratic values, committed to peace, and worked to strengthen its ties with both Western and Eastern European nations. At the same time, Germany faced new global challenges. The 2008 financial crisis, the European refugee crisis of 2015, and rising political polarization tested the country's ability to remain stable and united. Yet, through it all, Germany continued to evolve, demonstrating resilience and adaptability. While the fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of one era, reunification was just the beginning of another. The true test of Germany's unity lay not in tearing down a wall, but in bridging the divides that had shaped the country for half a century. Even decades after reunification, the legacy of divisions still influences Germany, but so does the spirit of resilience and progress that has defined its history. With reunification in 1990, Germany emerged as the most populous and economically powerful nation in Europe. However, its new position brought with it significant responsibilities and expectations. No longer divided by the Cold War, Germany had to redefine its place on the international stage. Over the following decades, the country transformed from a divided nation struggling with internal integration to a global economic leader, a key player in European politics, and a major force in international diplomacy. Germany's leadership in the European Union (EU). One of the most profound ways Germany exerted its influence was through its leadership in the European Union (EU). As a founding member of the European Economic Community (EEC), which later evolved into the EU, Germany played a central role in shaping the economic and political policies of Europe. Its position as Europe's largest economy gave it a crucial voice in financial and trade policies, and it was instrumental in the creation of the euro currency in 1999. However, Germany's leadership was not without controversy. During the Eurozone crisis, 2008 to 2012, when countries like Greece, Spain, and Italy struggled with massive debt, Germany took a firm stance in advocating for austerity measures, requiring these nations to implement strict budget controls in exchange for financial assistance. While some praised Germany's economic discipline and commitment to stabilizing the Eurozone, others criticized its approach as too rigid, arguing that it deepened economic hardships in southern European countries. Despite these tensions, Germany remained the backbone of the EU's economy, championing free trade, environmental policies, and economic cooperation. It also played a leading role in handling the Brexit negotiations, ensuring that the departure of the United Kingdom from the EU in 2020 did not destabilize the European economy. Economic powerhouse and global trade leader. Germany's economic model, based on strong exports, advanced manufacturing, and highly skilled labor, helped it become one of the world's largest economies. Companies such as Volkswagen, BMW, Siemens, and BASF became global leaders in industries ranging from automotive production to pharmaceuticals and engineering. Germany's economy thrived on exports, with its products in high demand worldwide, particularly in China, the United States, and other EU nations. However, with economic power came new challenges. Germany's heavy reliance on exports made it vulnerable to global economic shifts, including trade wars, supply chain disruptions, and geopolitical tensions. The rise of China as a major economic competitor forced Germany to rethink its industrial strategies, focusing more on technological innovation, artificial intelligence, and renewable energy sectors. Additionally, Germany has been at the forefront of environmental and energy policies, leading efforts to combat climate change through its Energiewende, energy transition policy. This ambitious program aims to shift Germany away from fossil fuels and nuclear energy towards renewable sources like wind and solar power. While this transition has been praised for its environmental impact, it has also faced criticism due to rising energy costs and economic challenges related to phasing out traditional energy sources. Germany's foreign policy and global diplomacy. Beyond economic leadership, Germany has also played a crucial role in international diplomacy. After World War II, Germany adopted a pacifist approach to global conflicts, avoiding direct military involvement and focusing on diplomacy, humanitarian aid, and peacekeeping missions. However, in the 21st century, Germany has faced growing pressure to take a more active role in international security. One of the key turning points was the 2001 US-led war on terror following the attacks on September 11th, where Germany provided support for NATO operations in Afghanistan, marking one of the few times its military was engaged in a foreign conflict since World War II. The experience, however, led to widespread debate within Germany about its military role in the world. Germany also became a leading advocate for multilateralism, working closely with institutions like the United Nations, NATO, and the G7/G20 to promote global stability. It played a key role in mediating conflicts, particularly in Europe, such as the Ukraine crisis in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea. German leaders, particularly Chancellor Angela Merkel, were seen as vital figures in negotiating peace talks and maintaining European unity in the face of Russian aggression. However, Germany's reliance on Russian energy became a major issue in the 2020s, particularly after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The war forced Germany to rapidly rethink its energy dependence and foreign policy approach, leading to stronger defense commitments within NATO and increased support for Ukraine. The refugee crisis and immigration policies. One of the most defining moments of Germany's modern history came in 2015, when Chancellor Angela Merkel made the controversial decision to allow over 1 million refugees, mostly from Syria, Afghanistan, and Iraq, to enter Germany. This decision, driven by humanitarian principles, showcased Germany's commitment to human rights and asylum policies. However, it also sparked fierce debate within the country. On one hand, Germany was praised for its generosity and moral leadership, with many refugees successfully integrating into German society through employment and education programs. On the other hand, the sudden influx of refugees led to political and social tensions, fueling the rise of far-right nationalist movements, such as the Alternative for Germany (AfD) party, which gained significant support by opposing immigration policies. The refugee crisis tested Germany's social cohesion, raising important questions about national identity, multiculturalism, and the balance between humanitarian responsibility and domestic stability. Over time, Germany worked to refine its immigration policies, focusing on integration programs, language training, and job placement initiatives to ensure that newcomers could contribute positively to society. Germany's technological and environmental future. As Germany moves further into the 21st century, it faces new technological and environmental challenges. The country has been investing heavily in digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and sustainable industries to maintain its position as a global leader. With growing concerns about climate change, Germany is working towards reducing carbon emissions and becoming climate neutral by 2045, setting ambitious targets for renewable energy and green technology development. At the same time, Germany must navigate geopolitical shifts, including tensions between the United States and China, the future of the EU, and the changing global economic landscape. Its role as a stabilizing force in Europe and a leader in international diplomacy will be tested as the world faces new economic, political, and security challenges. While Germany has come a long way from its divided past, its journey is far from over. The country's ability to adapt, innovate, and lead will determine its future not just in Europe, but on the global stage. As Germany moves further into the 21st century, it stands at a crossroads. The nation has experienced remarkable transformations over the last 100 years, rising from the devastation of 2 world wars, enduring decades of Cold War division, and emerging as one of the most powerful economies and political forces in the world. However, Germany's journey is far from complete. The challenges of the present and future will test its resilience, adaptability, and vision for a new era. Economic transformation and future industries. Germany's economy has long been the backbone of Europe, with its highly skilled workforce, cutting-edge industries, and strong export market. However, the world is changing, and Germany must evolve with it. The global economy is shifting towards digitalization, artificial intelligence, automation, and green technologies. Traditional industries like automobile manufacturing, once Germany's pride, are now facing pressure from electric vehicles, EVs, self-driving technology, and international competition. German automakers such as Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz are investing heavily in EVs and sustainable transportation, but they are also facing strong competition from American and Chinese manufacturers like Tesla and BYD. To stay ahead, Germany must redefine its industrial base, ensuring that its businesses remain innovative and globally competitive. Another major challenge is demographic change. Germany's population is aging rapidly, with a declining birth rate and increasing life expectancy. This means that by 2050, a significant portion of the German workforce will be retired, leading to potential labor shortages and increased pressure on the pension system. To address this, Germany is relying on immigration, education, and workforce training programs to fill critical gaps in industries such as engineering, healthcare, and technology. Germany's role in European and global leadership. As the most powerful country in Europe, Germany is expected to lead the continent through economic crises, political conflicts, and environmental challenges. However, with this leadership role comes increased responsibility and pressure. The European Union (EU) is facing rising nationalism, economic disparities between member states, and the ongoing impacts of Brexit. Germany must navigate these tensions while ensuring that the EU remains united, stable, and capable of addressing global issues. At the same time, Germany's relationships with global superpowers, the United States, China, and Russia, are constantly shifting. Historically, Germany has balanced its role as a close ally of the US while maintaining economic ties with China and managing security concerns with Russia. However, recent global events, such as trade disputes, military conflicts, and supply chain disruptions, have forced Germany to rethink its strategies. The Ukraine war and Germany's dependence on Russian energy forced the country to make rapid changes in its energy policies, cutting ties with Russian gas and investing heavily in renewable energy sources, liquefied natural gas, LNG, and alternative trade partnerships. These adjustments will shape Germany's energy independence and economic stability for years to come. Germany's commitment to diplomacy and international cooperation will continue to be tested as new conflicts and geopolitical tensions arise. Whether through its role in NATO, the UN, or the EU, Germany will be expected to take a stronger stance on global security, economic stability, and human rights issues. Social and cultural evolution. Germany is also experiencing significant social and cultural transformations. As one of the most diverse nations in Europe, it has seen a rise in multiculturalism, immigration, and social activism. The country has welcomed millions of immigrants, particularly following the refugee crisis of 2015, leading to ongoing debates about integration, national identity, and social cohesion. While many immigrants have successfully become part of German society, challenges remain. Political tensions surrounding immigration policies have led to the rise of far-right nationalist movements, which oppose Germany's open-door policies and multiculturalism. At the same time, progressive movements advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, gender equality, and climate action are reshaping Germany's social landscape. Germany must balance tradition with progress, ensuring that it remains an inclusive and forward-thinking society while addressing the concerns of those who feel left behind by rapid social changes. This balancing act will define the country's future identity and political landscape. The future of innovation and sustainability. One of Germany's biggest priorities in the coming decades is sustainability and climate change. As a global leader in environmental policies, Germany has set ambitious goals to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. This involves major investments in renewable energy, electric transportation, green manufacturing, and environmental conservation. However, transitioning to a fully sustainable economy is a complex and expensive process. Germany has already faced criticism for its phasing out of nuclear energy, which some argue has led to higher energy costs and increased reliance on coal during the transition. The country must now accelerate its investment in wind, solar, and hydrogen energy, while ensuring that industries can adapt without significant job losses. Additionally, technological advancements will play a crucial role in shaping Germany's future. From AI and automation to biotechnology and quantum computing, Germany must position itself as a leader in the next wave of global innovation. Universities, research institutions, and tech companies will be key drivers of this transformation, ensuring that Germany remains a hub for scientific progress. A nation still writing its story. Germany's past is one of struggle, division, and resilience, but its future is one of opportunity, innovation, and leadership. The country has continuously adapted to the challenges of history, proving its ability to rebuild, redefine, and rise stronger than before. However, the challenges of today require a new vision for tomorrow. As we reflect on the last 100 years, it is clear that Germany has undergone profound transformation, from the depths of war and division to its emergence as a unified, global leader in the modern world. The nation has demonstrated incredible resilience, confronting challenges both internal and external with a spirit of innovation, adaptation, and unity. Yet, the story of Germany is far from over. The next chapter will be written not just through the policies of its leaders, but through the actions of every citizen. The country stands at the threshold of a new era, one defined by the complex interplay of technological advancement, social change, and environmental responsibility. Germany's future will depend on its ability to embrace these challenges while remaining true to its values of democracy, equality, and international cooperation. Germany's leadership will be tested on the world stage as it continues to navigate the turbulent waters of global politics, economic uncertainty, and climate change. As the EU faces its own set of challenges and the global order continues to evolve, Germany's role as a unifier, a stabilizer, and a champion of human rights will be crucial. How Germany leads in the coming decades will shape not only the future of Europe, but also the broader international community. Internally, the nation must continue to foster social cohesion, balancing the demands of diversity with the preservation of its cultural identity. The success of this effort lies in the ability to embrace differences, create inclusive policies, and ensure that every voice, whether from the East or West, is heard and valued. Looking ahead, the story of Germany is a story of progress, not just for its people, but for the world at large. The decisions made today, whether in government, industry, or civil society, will lay the foundation for a Germany that is not only a leading economic power but a beacon of sustainability, humanity, and peace. As it stands, Germany's future is a collective endeavor, a partnership between past achievements and future aspirations. This journey will not be without its obstacles, but the strength of the German people, united in their diversity, will continue to drive the country forward toward an even brighter future. It is a future where Germany continues to be a leader, not only in Europe but across the globe, setting the example for others to follow. In the end, Germany's 100 years of history have laid the groundwork for a powerful and inspiring legacy. And it is in the next 100 years that Germany's most defining achievements, contributions, and successes will unfold, shaping a world that is ever more interconnected, innovative, and just. Together, as a unified nation, Germany will continue to thrive, evolve, and lead, inspiring future generations to build on the promise of peace, prosperity, and progress for all.